Hi, I'm James Christmas, and today I'm going to be tying a fly called the Flaming Lamborghini. The Flaming Lamborghini is a general baitfish fly that I designed around 8 years ago here on Alphonse Island. It's a sort of reddish fly that we use to imitate a variety of sort of smaller baitfish that you find in and around the coral. The materials you'll need for this fly are some red hackle feathers, craft fur in sort of red, orange and yellow, some SF fiber in red and yellow, and some stick-on eyes. The hook that we tie this on is the one I'm using today, is called a SC1550 made by Gamakatsu. You could also use the 8Os, they're also very good as GT hooks, but this is quite a nice hook. It's very strong and it's a sort of a nice sort of smallish size for creating slightly smaller GT flies. I'm going to start off with the tail. Just going to put in a small bit of this red SF. Next I'm going to add a little bit of this yellow SF. And lastly, a little bit more red to top off the tail. The next thing to go in is a couple of nice sort of red saddle feathers. Okay, I'm just going to tie these feathers in either side of this SF fiber. The nice thing about this Flaming Lamborghini is it's very visible in the water, so the predatory fish can pick it up from quite a long way away. It has proven very successful on our sort of favourite predator out here, which is the giant trevally. Okay, the next stage of this fly requires what is known as a sort of dubbing loop. I'm going to form a brush using a dubbing loop technique. If you make your own brushes, you could also just make up some brushes out of the various colours of craft fur that I'm going to use. What I'm going to do now is just prepare the craft fur, which I'm going to insert into this dubbing loop. So I prefer to remove the sort of what we would consider under fur if it were a natural material, which is just these shorter fibers. So just hold on to the longer ones and pull out the short ones. The predominant color on this fly is of course red. I like to sort of blend in some oranges and yellow as well, which I'm going to do shortly. But if you just tie it all red, it's also a very effective fly. Now I'm just going to add some highlights with some orange and yellow craft fur. Going to add a minimal amount into this dubbing loop here. Okay, what I've done here is that the colours that I'm blending into this dubbing loop, I've kind of kept them just on one side of this bunch of materials that I'm going to insert into the loop. Simply because what I'm trying to achieve is when I finish off the fly in the front, I want a more predominantly red fibre. So I'm going to keep this other stuff that's going to be the highlights more on the back side of the fly. So So what I've done now is I've inserted the crafter into this sort of material clip. The standard bulldog clip is also suitable for doing this kind of thing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the crafter into the dubbing loop, like so. And the next stage is just to basically create a brush using the dubbing loop method. Okay, once you form the brush, we're then going to just wrap this towards the front of the hook. Every time you wrap, you just need to try and sort of manipulate the fibers back towards the back of the flower. I'm just going to now just make sure we can comb all the fibers off nicely. Nice shape of the fly. Okay, so basically this is the bulk of the tying, so I'm just going to tie off the front here, make sure it's all nice and neat. Okay, and the last thing to be done on this fly is to add stick-on eyes to finish. One thing that is particular to all the baitfish flies that I tie is I like to position the stick-on eyes above the shank of the hook. Reason being, we're trying to create quite a deep-bodied fly, and basically if you centralize these big eyes on the shank of the hook, what happens is you obscure part of the gape, which kind of takes away from the hookup effectiveness of the pattern. So I try not to obscure the gape of the hook at all with the stick-on eyes. Okay, once I've got these eyes in place, what I'm going to do is I'm then going to super glue them into position. But before I do that, since I'm using a white tying thread, I'm just going to color in the thread head with a red marker. And last but not least, I'm just going to add a drop of super glue in here. It's important to hold these eyes and press them nice and firmly to get everything to set in place. One of the added advantages of positioning your stick-on eyes above the shank of the hook, if you super glue them and press them, you create almost like a sort of a keeling effect above the shank of the hook, which does also help to allow the fly to track nice and straight in the water. Okay, that's the Flaming Lamborghini.